All right, strap in, everyone. Today, we are going deep on Polymarket,
Polymarket, yeah.
a prediction market platform that, well, let's just say it's been making some noise lately. Not all good.
Yeah, yeah, definitely ruffling some feathers out there.
So for anyone who maybe hasn't heard of it, um, prediction markets basically let users bet on future events using cryptocurrency. Kind of like a stock market, but for, what's going to happen down the road.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Instead of like buying Apple stock, you're betting on will TikTok get banned? Who's going to win the next election? That kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And what's got everyone talking about Polymarket specifically is, well, it's been having a bit of a tough time with regulators all over the globe. Like we're talking blocked access in some countries, fines, even subpoenas, the whole shebang.
Yeah, no kidding. It's definitely been in the hot seat.
So we've got a whole stack of stuff to dig through here. News articles, Polymarket's own website, even some, let's say, spirited opinion pieces, all to try and figure out, like, how does this thing even work? Is it actually accurate? And why are governments all over the place trying to, like, shut it down?
It's a head scratcher for sure. Well, maybe we should start with the basics. Like Polymarket's whole idea is that the wisdom of the crowd, right? That collective knowledge that can actually predict the future better than any one expert could.
Okay, I'm following so far.
Yeah.
But how's that actually, like, play out on the platform? I know they use that TikTok example a lot, right?
Yeah, the TikTok one, that's a good one. So basically, users on Polymarket, they buy and sell shares that represent different outcomes. So like TikTok gets banned or TikTok survives. And the price of each of those shares, it directly reflects what the crowd thinks, their belief in that outcome.
So, like, if tons of people are convinced that a ban is coming, then the ban shares, they go up in price.
Exactly. You got it. And it's not like you're betting against Polymarket itself, right? There's no house here. It's all user versus user, with prices constantly shifting based on new information and how everyone's trading. Plus, they use USDC, which is a stablecoin. It's pegged to the US dollar, so you're not dealing with the craziness of Bitcoin prices going haywire, you know?
Makes sense. But I gotta ask, is it really, like, is it actually more accurate than, say, I don't know, a panel of political analysts or something?
Well, that's what Polymarket claims. And you know what? There's actually research out there that seems to back it up. When you think about it, prediction markets, they combine so much stuff, news, polls, even, like insider gossip. Everything gets kind of baked into a single probability that's always updating in real time. And of course, traders, they have a real financial incentive to actually be right.
Okay, so it's not just like vibes and gut feelings. People are putting their money where their mouth is. But couldn't you also argue that people just get caught up in the hype, Just follow the crowd, even if it's headed off a cliff.
Oh, for sure. That's a big criticism. Forbes, for example, they pointed out that, like, herding behavior can totally make the market irrational. In fact, Polymarket, they have this analogy. It's about a really strong hockey team, right? They have some temporary setbacks and everyone starts to panic, sell their shares. But the savvy traders, they buy low because they know fundamentally that team's still a winner.
Hold on. So you could actually make money off the market, like overreacting, even if you yourself think that, like, the team's going to pull through in the end. That's kind of sneaky.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's just a different way of thinking about betting, It's not
It's
always about your own personal prediction, but about, like, spotting those little differences between what the market thinks and what's actually going to happen.
Okay, so there's more to it than just, like, will this thing happen or not? It's about understanding how everyone else is thinking about it, too.
Yeah, exactly. And that's actually like a big difference between Polymarket and, say, traditional polls. Polls just ask you your preference, like who do you want to win? But Polymarket, it's measuring probability based on this whole ecosystem of information, right?
So a candidate could be polling at, like, 60% support.
Yeah.
But their odds on Polymarket could be totally different because the market's factoring in, like, I don't know, breaking news or something.
Exactly. And that actually brings up another wrinkle, like there are no betting limits on Polymarket. Imagine some billionaire just comes in and drops like 10 million bucks on one outcome versus, my measly $50 bet.
Yeah.
That's going to like really shake things up.
Whoa, yeah. Well, talk about influencing the crowd. Doesn't that kind of undermine that whole wisdom of the crowd thing?
Well, it can definitely create some distortions, at least temporarily. But don't forget, the crowd, they can always correct the market if they think that big bet was just totally off base, right? It's this constant like push and pull, this back and forth.
So it's not just about betting on what you think. It's about, like, predicting how everyone else is going to react to, like, news and events and all that.
Yeah, and that's where things get even more interesting because some traders, Get this, they actually bet against their own beliefs if they think it's going to be profitable.
Wait, really? That seems like totally counterintuitive. Why would anyone bet against what they actually think is going to happen?
Well, they might see a chance to make a buck off a future price spike, you know? Or maybe they think the odds are way too high and there's going to be a correction, even if they personally support that outcome, you know?
So it's less about like picking the winner and more about playing the market itself, almost.
Exactly. You're exploiting those little market inefficiencies, and that leads to a whole different kind of wisdom of the crowd, one that's, way more strategic, way more driven by
It's like
profits.
this like whole other level of analysis beyond just predicting the event itself.
Yeah, for sure. But it kind of makes you wonder, are all crowds really created equal when it comes to wisdom?
Right. Good point. And that actually brings us to, I guess, the big elephant in the room, right? This whole global crackdown that's been happening. Like Singapore, for example, they just straight up blocked access to Polymarket, said it violates their Gambling Control Act.
Wow, no Polymarket for Singaporeans, huh? Sounds serious.
They're not messing around, talking about fines, even jail time.
Mhm.
But what's interesting is like Singapore's usually pretty pro-blockchain, right? I mean, they're ranked really high for blockchain patents, jobs, all that. They even doubled their crypto licenses just last year.
So it's not like they're just like anti-crypto across the board. It's
They're drawing a line somewhere.
Yeah, and it's not just them, right? Over here in the US, the CFTC, the Commodity Futures Trading Commission, they subpoenaed Coinbase for user data related to Polymarket.
Hold on. So the U.S. government wants to know, like, who's using Polymarket? That's a little creepy, don't you think?
Well, it definitely raises some privacy concerns for sure. And this isn't even the first time the CFTC has gone after Polymarket. Back in 2022, they slapped them with a $1.4 million fine, basically made the platform off limits for U.S. citizens.
What was their reasoning for that?
Basically, they said Polymarket was operating an unregistered derivatives trading platform. And, well, that brings us to another pretty important concept that we probably should.
Yeah, maybe unpack that a little bit. What exactly is a derivatives trading platform, and why does the CFTC care so much?
So a derivative, basically, it's a contract, right? And it gets its value from how some other asset performs. In Polymarket's case, those assets are, well, they're the outcomes of these future events, right?
So the CFTC is basically saying, like, these bets on Polymarket, they're more like, I don't know, complex financial instruments than just simple wagers.
Exactly. And they think these kinds of instruments, they need to be regulated to, protect investors, make sure the market's fair, all that.
It's wild, right? This whole idea, betting on what's going to happen, it seems so simple on the surface, but then it gets tangled up in all these complex financial regulations.
It really highlights how tricky it is to apply like these old legal frameworks to these new decentralized technologies. And just to add to Polymarket's headaches, they also had to block users in France after their gaming regulator started poking around.
So it seems like Polymarket's facing a real uphill battle here, trying to operate in this like constantly shifting legal landscape. And we haven't even gotten into like the ethical questions, the philosophical stuff about prediction markets themselves. Maybe that's something we could,
Yeah.
it really makes you think, doesn't it? Like, is this the future of finance or just some high-tech casino?
It is. It's a tough one. I mean, you have this super innovative platform, right? Pushing the limits of what blockchain can do, but it's also like clashing head on with how we think about gambling, investing.
Free speech, you said,
So
right?
yeah, that too.
But how does free speech even come into play here?
Think about it this way. Like, if governments start deciding what you can and can't bet on, aren't they basically saying what we can and can't even speculate about?
Right.
Like, what if they ban prediction markets on elections? Wouldn't that kind of stifle open discussion, shut down the exchange of ideas?
Yeah, it does feel a little bit like, okay, you can have your opinions, but don't you dare put your money where your mouth is.
It's a slippery slope, no doubt.
Yeah.
And how these regulatory battles shake out, well, that could have huge implications for prediction markets going forward. Like, what role will they play in society? That's a big question. But before we go too deep on that, maybe we should step back and look at how Polymarket actually works, like practically speaking.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I get the basic idea, but like, how do you actually use it?
So remember, it's all about those shares, right? Buying and selling shares that represent different outcomes. And those shares, their value, they're always priced somewhere between $0 and $1 USDC. And that price reflects, how confident the market is in that outcome.
Okay, so let's say there's a market on, I don't know, whether a certain movie is going to win Best Picture at the Oscars.
Sure.
And I'm feeling really good about this move, right? I buy shares in the yes outcome.
Exactly. And let's say, just for example, the price of those shares is like 75 cents.
Okay.
That means right now, the market thinks there's a 75% chance that movie's going to win.
So the closer that price gets to $1, the more people believe it's going to happen.
You got it. And here's the cool part. You're not stuck with your position, right? You can buy and sell those shares anytime you want. Trying to, like, make some profit as the odds change leading up to, Oscar night. Let's say, like, a week before the awards, some bad press comes out about that movie.
Ooh, yes, juicy Hollywood gossip. That would probably spook people, right?
Right.
Make them less confident.
Yeah.
The price of my yes shares would probably drop.
Right. Maybe down to, say, 50 cents. And then someone who thinks the movie is, like, underrated now, they might buy your shares, hoping they'll go back up if the movie pulls off an upset win.
So it's all this back and forth, right? Like what you think's going to happen versus how you think everyone else is going to react to, like news and stuff, and change their bets.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. And once the event actually happens, so the Oscars in this case, the shares for the correct outcome, they pay out $1 each.
So my movie wins Best Picture. My 75-cent shares are now worth $1 each. Oh, cha-ching! But what if, like, I bet on the wrong horse?
Well, in that case, your shares, they go to zero. That's the risk, right? But that's also what pushes people to, to really think things through, make those informed predictions.
It's so interesting, like such a simple mechanism, but it creates this dynamic, almost addictive. I can totally see the appeal.
Oh, yeah, it definitely plays on, like our human instincts, that drive to be right, that competitive spirit. But I think there's more to it than that, Beyond just winning and losing, there's a real intellectual draw to prediction markets, too.
Okay, what's so brainy about betting on stuff?
Well, think about who's using platforms like Polymarket. You've got your everyday folks who just enjoy the challenge. Then you get your, data nerds crunching numbers, trying to get that edge. You even have academics studying how markets reflect collective knowledge.
So it's not just a gamble. It's like analyzing information, predicting trends, maybe even learning something about human behavior along the way.
Bingo. And as these platforms, they evolve, we're going to see even more sophisticated strategies come out, using AI to predict market movements. It's a whole new field of research opening up.
Whoa. AI predicting the predictors. Yeah, that's getting a little too meta for me. But okay, I see your point. Polymarket, it can be more than just a way to, like, make a quick buck.
Right. It's got some depth to it. But we can't forget about, all that regulatory stuff we were talking about. It's still a big cloud hanging over the whole thing.
Yeah, for real. Like, it seems every time a prediction market starts getting some traction, the governments come in swinging, trying to shut it down.
It's that classic problem, Technology moves way faster than regulation, and these platforms, they're decentralized, which makes them even harder to control. They're operating across borders outside those traditional legal systems.
It's kind of like, the early days of the internet when everyone was trying to figure out how do you even govern this crazy new world of information.
That's a really good comparison. And just like the internet, the key is finding that balance. Letting innovation happen, but also making sure people are protected.
But what even counts as, like, harm in this situation? Is it just losing money? Or are there, like, bigger societal risks we should be thinking about?
That's a big question. And honestly, it's one that lawmakers are wrestling with right now.
It's almost like we're talking about something, I don't know, like bigger than just whether Polymarket makes it or not. It's a philosophical thing, Like, what's the role of prediction in society?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Like, on the one hand, you could say these prediction markets, they're a powerful tool, right? Like, we can gather information, make better decisions.
I mean, imagine if you could use it to predict things like, I don't know, disease outbreaks,
Right.
climate change.
Right.
If they're really as accurate as Polymarket says, that could be huge.
Absolutely. But then there's the other side of the coin. Like, what if those predictions, they end up becoming self-fulfilling prophecies? Or what if someone uses them to manipulate markets?
Okay, yeah. Now we're getting into some scary territory.
Right. Like, the more powerful the tool is, the bigger the potential for someone to abuse it.
Exactly. So that's where all this regulation stuff comes in, I guess.
Yeah.
It's not about, like, stopping innovation. It's about, putting up some guardrails, making sure things don't go completely off the rails.
Right. But it's about finding that balance.
Which is tough.
Oh, for sure. Because too much regulation and you just, like, kill the whole point of a decentralized open market.
Right.
But too little and you risk, well, who knows what could happen.
Chaos.
Exactly. And it's not like there's one solution that fits everywhere, right? Like, what works in one country might be totally wrong somewhere else. Cultures have different views on gambling, laws about financial markets.
It's a mess.
A total mess. It must be a nightmare for Polymarket trying to keep up with all these different rules everywhere they operate.
Yeah, it really highlights that tension, right, between like each country wanting to do its own thing and this technology that just doesn't care about borders.
Right. It's like they're trying to draw these lines in the sand, but the tide keeps coming in and washing them away.
So where does that leave us? Like, is there any hope for Polymarket, or are these prediction markets, are they just always going to be stuck in this tug of war with the governments?
Honestly, it's hard to say. A lot depends on whether the regulators, if they can adapt. And if platforms like Polymarket can figure out a way to work within those rules, however they change.
So maybe they need to, I don't know, be more proactive, work with the governments instead of just trying to fly under the radar.
That's one way to go, yeah. And they might have to make some compromises, like maybe putting limits on how much people can bet or being more selective about what kinds of markets they offer.
It's kind of sad, though, because it feels like we're just starting to see what prediction markets can really do.
I agree. But even if Polymarket doesn't survive in its current form, I think the idea itself, it's not going away. People, they're always going to be curious about the future.
It's just human nature, right? Wanting to know what's going to happen
Yeah.
and maybe making a few bucks along the way.
Exactly. So whether it's through these formal platforms or just, casual bets with friends, people are going to find ways to predict the future.
Well, that's both exciting and a little bit scary all at the same time. Makes you wonder, what will people be betting on 10 years from now? What kind of crazy new markets will pop up?
Now those are the questions to think about. And it reminds us we got to stay informed, stay sharp, and be ready for anything.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Well, this has been a wild ride. Thanks for taking us down this rabbit hole with Polymarket.
Happy to do it. Always fun to, shake things up and look at things from a new angle.
Absolutely. And to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to check out Polymarket's website, even if it's blocked where you are, just to see how it works. And definitely read up on prediction markets in general. It's a fast-moving space, and it touches so many parts of our lives.
That's right. From finance and tech to psychology, even philosophy, these prediction markets, they make us think about some really big questions, like how do we understand the world? Where do we fit into it all?
It's been a blast exploring all this with you. Thanks again for joining us on this deep dive into Polymarket. Until next time, keep those predictions coming, everyone.